All right, we are live. Welcome to Ashmont Realty Live, and we have a very special guest today. Everyone's been freaking out. We got two types of agents out there. Agents that are freaked out with all these NAR changes, and then other agents that have no idea what I'm talking about. But one of the updates pertains to VA loans, and we have our very good friend, lender girl, Lauryn Dunn in the house. So thanks,
Hi, everybody.
Lauryn. Hey, thanks for coming on today. So we're going to talk about the updates that are affecting VA loans. And Lauryn is the VA queen. And I wanted to bring her on to break down all the upcoming updates that we have that's going to affect your VA buyer. So we're going to talk about that and a lot more right after this.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Well, thanks, Lauryn, for coming on. Like I mentioned in the intro, we really have two different types of agents, it seems, after all this NAR hoopla. And you have agents that have no idea what anyone's talking about. They're completely lost. And I think that's a shame because brokers need to be talking about this. It's coming. It's going to be a state law in Ohio very soon as well because it's an NAR rule. There's two different ways to look at that. But I can tell you it will become a law probably within the next maybe 8-9 months. But one of the things that really was concerning was VA buyers because, commissions and, buyers can't pay agent commissions and all that stuff. But they made some updates. And that's why I wanted you to come on today. And you got some slides. We're gonna cover that. So go ahead, lender girl Lauryn Dunn in the house. So go ahead and then kick it off and kind of break it down and debunk some of the myths.
Awesome. I sure will. Well, thanks so much for having me again. Always love being here with you guys. And you guys probably know that historically VA buyers have never been allowed to pay any realtor commissions, any broker admin fees, anything like that, right? I catch those all the time on settlement statements. I say, nope, that stuff has to go. So with the NAR changes, we've all been left wondering what's going to happen to our veterans, right? So VA finally updated. They published a circular, and we'll have that link to you guys later if you want to read it over after the fact. Published a pretty short, pretty straightforward circular, which is like an update to the VA guidelines on how this is going to take effect. Now, it does take effect August 10th. VA buyers are allowed to pay reasonable and customary realtor commissions and broker fees. So reasonable and customary, don't charge any junk fees, right? Like this is just your normal stuff. But that's the update. Now, this is for contracts that close on or after August 10th, not ones that are written on or after August 10th. So it's going to go into effect, pretty quickly. So, Adam, I have a couple slides. If you want to bring those up, we'll go through those pretty quickly. I'm happy to take questions if you guys have any. So those are kind of the key points on this. And, we talked just really briefly about the history. Technically, it's a temporary ruling from the VA. Now, why is it temporary? An actual regulation to move from being a circular into the actual 26.7, which is the VA handbook or guidelines, can take 1 to 2 years. And I personally think that we may see some of this shake out a little bit. I can't imagine there's not going to be maybe some counter lawsuits or some other legislation that takes place over time. So it gives time for some of that stuff to shake out. Not to preach to the choir, but it's kind of the whole, substance of this lawsuit is it hurts the consumer. Well, who does it really hurt? It hurts the first-time home buyers and the veterans and the people who don't necessarily have the extra money to bring into a transaction for the realtor commission. So that's a whole other class we could talk about.
And then before you get started, Lauryn, we are live. It's Tuesday, June 25th at noon. So if you're watching this right now, we are live, and Lauryn can ask, if you want to ask Lauryn a question, put it in the comments section below. Most of you will see this later, because everyone's busy today, what have you. But if you put it in the comments, Lauryn and myself will keep an eye on it. If you have any questions for her, or if you have a potential VA buyer, reach out to Lauryn. And, she can help with that. She's very, very good. Any VA questions I send to her. So, but without further ado, let's go ahead and I do have some questions too, and I'll wait to the end.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
But,
And always reach out to me if you guys are watching this later. I always say, if you have a VA buyer or a transaction, or if you have a listing agent and you get a VA offer, even if I'm not the lender on any side of that, call me and I'm happy to walk you through and tell you the right questions to ask to make sure that if on the listing side that your buyer is approved correctly and you're not going to run into issues during your transaction. And on the buyer side, we can talk everything from approval to minimum property requirements, appraisals, what to do if your value comes in low on your appraisal, everything. So I'm a really good resource for you and for your vet. So please use me, yourlendergirl.com, probably the easiest way to get my contact info.
Yep.
Right. So that first slide kind of went over. So that's for closings on or after August 10th. And again, reasonable and customary. Just a little plug here for that broker admin fee. I usually see it between $300 to $500. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? So think about that. Maybe that's something that you can now offer your veteran clients. Like, hey, we do have a broker admin fee, or you may call it something slightly different, but I choose to pass that as a discount on to you as my veteran. I'm not going to charge that to you, right? So that's something that you can talk about and think about, but can really be a good help. On my veteran transaction, we waive all of our lender fees and we don't build that into our pricing. So it does not cost the veteran more in any way, shape, or form on the loan amount. We do that for all of our veterans. So just a nice way to kind of give back and say thank you.
So, hey, Lauren, so the broker fee, the transaction fee, we call it many different things. That was something we could not charge, but now with the new update, they're saying you can charge it.
Correct. Reasonable.
Is that something the seller can pay for?
Yeah, absolutely. The seller can pay for, they still can pay for everything. And we'll go over that here as well. But now it's just that the seller doesn't have to pay for it. It's the buyer can pay for it as well. So if you want to go on to that second slide, we'll talk about like, okay, how does this actually work in real life, right? Okay, so there's three main ways that the commissions can be covered or paid for on a VA transaction now. So the first way is the regular way, right? The seller pays the buyer broker for the commission, and nothing really changes, right? That's just kind of the regular way that it's been done all of these years. We do love to see that continue when it can. And obviously, you guys as real estate agents do a great job explaining your value and to your sellers, especially why they should be offering commission, right? I'm sure Adam's covered a lot of that stuff with you guys, but that can still be done. The regular way can still be done. The second way is to include it in the purchase price. Now, there's a small distinction here between including it in the loan amount and including it in the purchase price. So we cannot include it in the loan amount. And what I mean by that, not to get too into the weeds, is that it will not change the loan to value of the veteran's loan. So for instance, some veterans have a VA funding fee. If they have less than a 10% disability rating, they will have to pay a VA funding fee. Now that's something they can pay in cash at closing, but nobody does. Almost everybody rolls it into the loan amount. So let's say that that is 2.15%. And they're going in zero down, right? So normally it would be 100% loan to value, right? So your purchase price is the same as your loan amount. But now if they finance the funding fee, it would be 102.15% of the home's value. And that's allowable for the funding fee. That's not allowable for the commission. So again, that's more on the lender side, but just to kind of explain that to you guys, it cannot be included in the loan amount. So just be careful of your language, but it can be included in the purchase price. And this is what we all did through COVID with every loan type, right? Is we offered more than the asking price and we asked for X dollars for, whatever back, right? Usually it was, closing costs or something like that. So you can still structure your offers to where you offer, X amount of dollars more than the asking price. And then you write into the contract that the seller to pay that difference in commission. Now, does the house appraise is the next question, right? To go into that a little bit. Yeah, if the house does not appraise, first of all, the VA has two ways to affect value on the appraisal, and no other loan type has that. We actually have other agencies like the Fannie Freddie conventional and HUD, like for FHA, looking at the way that the VA does that to possibly and hopefully adopt some of that because it's been so successful. So Adam, do you want me to go into those? We have time to kind of go into what those two ways are briefly.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
So let's say your value comes in low. And by the way, this could because you wrote in or you inflated the purchase price to get something covered or get your offer accepted, or it just could be in any regular circumstance. Okay. So this is more of a general thing. So if the appraiser is working on their report, they're looking at comps and they're going, gosh, I don't see how I'm going to be able to come to this contract price. They will invoke what's called Tidewater. It's named after the Tidewater Act, I think of 2019. So
you said
it's called
Tidewater.
Tidewater.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's just like
it.
you said, it's just kind of a random name, but they will reach out to the lender, and then the lender in turn will reach out to the agents. And this is the time for the agents to shine, because this is the appraiser reaching out and asking for help. It's unheard of, right? So it's almost like an underwriter asking for help. It doesn't happen. So they're reaching out and they're asking for help and saying, what am I missing? Are there other comps that are, maybe cash sales or weren't on the MLS that have closed? Like, how did you come to this contract price? Support your value and show me. And that gives the agents time to get about 24 hours. They give us 48 total, but I give you guys about 24 hours to come back with processing time and things, with some comps and some reasoning to support your purchase price. Okay. Then the appraiser takes that into consideration, and then they issue their report. So then the appraisal comes in at above value or below value. Now, if it still comes in below value, this is where I love VA loans, because the VA itself gives you the ability to go over the appraiser's head and go straight to the VA and make your case for why this house should be, appraised at the contract price. My joke with myself is that I help the veteran write a long enough letter that the VA doesn't even want to take the time to read it, and so they just approve the value. So, but we put in there the amenities, comps, like reasons why the veteran wants to live there. I mean, it's usually a good 2 or 3 page letter, but it's the ability to go over the appraiser's head, not involve them at all. And there's a really, really good success rate on getting increased values. And that process is called reconsideration of value. And that's just one of the reasons who you work with matters. Make sure that you're working with a lender who knows these processes and doesn't let the opportunity go by if you do have a low appraisal, right? Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have one. Does that hold up the, how long of a delay would that be? Like, because if you're the buyer agent and you're trying to fight the value and things, how long, is there a timeline? Like, you got 24 hours to submit it and then they review it in 48. So it's not that big of a deal.
So the Tidewater is 48 hours, and then maybe another day or so for the appraiser to review it and kick the appraisal out. The reconsideration of value can take up to 5 business days once it's assigned to somebody at the VA. So there's, I would say, 5 to 8 business days with time for us to package the argument of why we think this house meets contract value. So could that delay your contract? Yes, but like, I order the appraisals on day 1. We get them back pretty fast. The VA has published turn times on appraisals, and I think it's 8 business days in Ohio from the day after the appraiser's appraisal is assigned. So there's time in a contract. I mean, I can close a VA loan pretty quickly. So if you're on a 15 or 20 day escrow, will that delay it? It could. If you're on a regular 25, 30 day escrow, it should not delay things.
20 days is fast for VA, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty standard for us, but again, it's just kind of like who you work with matters. When you know the processes and what to do and how to do the loans, and the pre-approvals are done correctly up front, then it's not too much extra effort in there. So if it does look like there might cause a delay in your contract period, obviously we're open with the communication and we talk with all parties. And in most cases, the sellers are willing to give it a few more days because they might save the deal, save some money with negotiations, right? Because if your appraisal comes in low, no matter what, like everything's back up to renegotiation, right? Buyers come back out, sellers come back out, etc. So it usually at that point, it behooves people to put their heads together and try to see how they can make it work. And if there's a chance that we can get a higher value and save them, I mean, I've had $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 increase in value on appraisals before. Like, most parties are okay with that, but we set those expectations correctly up front.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lauren.
No, the last thing I was going to say is that if the appraisal still comes in low, the veteran can pay for an appraisal gap, right? Now, there's always questions about the escape or the amendatory clause that comes up when we say this. The VA has said that the voluntary contract that the veteran has written in will supersede the escape clause for that. So they are allowed to pay for an appraisal gap out of their own funds. It cannot be gifted funds. It has to come out of their own money to pay for that.
Got it. Okay. When you contest an appraisal with the VA, you have a letter and all of these comps that you're
Mhm.
sending in.
Mhm.
Does the VA reappraise it again? Do they
Nope.
reappraise it, or they just look what you gave them and say like, "All right, this makes sense," or do
Yeah,
they
they'll
do
look at
like a
the
desktop evaluation or anything?
They do some desktop evaluations. So they'll look at the appraisal, they'll look at our rebuttal to it,
Okay.
reconsideration of value, and they'll do some of their own research as well. In order for them to look at the reconsideration of value, we have at the lender, our SAR has had to issue the NOV, the notice of value, which has some details from the lender, and that usually takes a business day or less. So they have all the
Mhm.
information they need. They do some of their own research as well, and then they'll issue. I have gotten every single one up to contract value that I've submitted, except for one, which was in kind of it was a track home. Like there was literally nothing to support the value. We just tried it kind of for a Hail Mary. And I told everybody, like, don't hold your breath on this because there's literally nothing out there at all to support a higher value. It was just a competitive offer situation and they had to bid way over asking price. But other than that, they're pretty successful in most cases. So
Okay. Well,
yeah,
you
so
gotta
that's
try, right?
yeah, you got to, and that's what I say. Why not try? So
Mhm.
again, those are just a lot of the background of why you can build in the commission into the purchase price if you need to. All
Okay.
right. The last way to do it is now you can include it in the closing costs, and that's probably like the biggest real change, right? Because we've always done it the regular way. We've always been able to include it in the purchase price, right? It's just not a line item for commissions on there. It's just the seller's net proceeds are a little bit higher.
Yep.
But including it in the closing costs is kind of the big change. So the buyer can pay it along with their closing costs. Some distinctions here. We say in my group, the Veteran Lending Council, don't FHA my VA. Okay, FHA loans and VA loans are very different. FHA has a 6% cap on what the seller can contribute. VA has 4% for seller concessions plus closing costs. That's unlimited. Okay. So there's a seller concession box and there is a closing cost box on VA. Seller concessions are limited to certain items. So this 4% is only limited to certain items. The commissions does not fall within that 4%. So that goes into the unlimited box, right? So you could charge 10% for your commissions and that's fine. The seller can cover it. Okay.
Well, 4%
So
is more than yeah.
yeah. So, but the 4%, that's the only items that are limited to that are things like payment of the veteran's funding fee, which a seller can do, gifts like TVs and appliances, reasonable and customary points. So we say about 2 points in this market, the seller can pay for if the buyer is wanting to buy their rate down. Now, again, this is only that limited to the 4%. Anything above those 2 points, like let's say they wanted to pay more or they were doing a temporary buy down, which costs more, that goes into the unlimited closing costs. Okay. So 2%.
Okay.
Also, one of the big things that people don't know about VA is that the seller can pay towards the veteran's consumer debt. So maybe you have some extra seller credit or concession at the end, and we need to pull a credit card statement from the veteran and have them use that extra seller credit that they might normally lose to go to their credit card. Or what if you're creatively structuring the loan up front, going, gosh, we're going to have this much in seller credit, or we're asking for this much. If I use this as a lender to pay off a veteran's car loan, credit card, etc., it's going to save them so much more money per month for their budget, and or it can help them qualify with their DTI. It's just really creative ways to structure that. And it's like, again, the more you know. So, but those items are the 4% cap. So those items cannot equal more than 4%. And then the closing cost, that's going to be like your prepaids, now your realtor commission, anything in excess of a couple points, that's unlimited. So don't let anyone tell you there's a cap to VA seller concessions. There's only a cap for certain items. Okay. And commission.
Okay.
Yeah. So any questions on that?
Like looking at this here. So, I mean, I think I guess the purchase price, we did that all the time years ago. It seemed, you'd bump the price and then, you give to the seller, then the seller gives it back and they kind of end up net. It's kind of a wash. So that's one way. But yeah, you always have to worry about the appraisal part of it. And I think, but going forward, I think most people will probably do the closing costs items, because that's how like title companies and things I've been talking with, saying, yeah, this is the language. And so with language, I guess, Lauren, is there something in particular that we need to write in the contract? Meaning, is there verbiage that the VA or the lender like you wants to see? So if I
Yeah.
have a VA buyer and I said, hey, seller needs to pay my 3% commission, what's some language that we need to put in the contracts for the
So if you want to
agents?
go on to that next slide, that's one of our bullet points.
Oh,
So
okay. I'm jumping ahead, aren't I? All right. I'm
no,
all
you're perfect.
excited.
That was a perfect segue. You're good.
Yeah.
So
All right. Thank you.
it does
That was
have to be in the contract, right? So pretty much no matter which option you choose, you want it in your
got
contract.
it.
So if it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist, right?
Exist. Got it.
So make sure you're writing in the contract. Now, in terms of the verbiage, it kind of depends on, which way you're doing it, right? But generally, like seller to pay buyer, broker for commission is fine. If it's going in the closing costs, you can put it in, non-recurring closing costs, or you can even say, seller to credit buyer, buyer's agent X amount, right? So that's going to be different depending on the contract, right? So I know we have like the Columbus contract. If you have people out in Dayton, I think there's a different contract out there. You may want to do some looking and seeing like how that's written into that language. We will put it as a lender, and the title companies, we will put it on as a line item on the closing disclosure. So it will go on there, but it does need to be in the contract. So I've even had it as simple as, seller to pay, full 3% or, for realtor commission, right? And then we put it on the CD, the closing disclosure, in a certain way. So
I've done that for years when you have, because I think that's the misconception on the lawsuit. Like, oh no, we always told everyone to pay 3%. There's a lot of deals that were less, like 1 or 2.5. And I'm like, well, I get 3. So when in the contract, I would just put, seller to pay 3% of purchase price to buyer broker fee. So are we calling it commissions now? Or like in the contract going forward, do we call it, Lauren, do we call it like seller to pay 3% of purchase price? Or do we say, or do we give a dollar amount, or it could be either way? And do we still call them commissions? Or do we call it like a credit?
Yeah, I mean, I would put that it's for commissions, and it can be a credit or commissions, or however. Again, it depends on which option you use, right? If it's going on, if they're paying it in the closing costs, or if it's going to purchase price or whatever. I would personally put a percentage, because that way, if you do have any negotiations with the, appraised value, contract price, et cetera, maybe you offer 385, but you go into contract at 380, you're not having to like redo that. You're not stuck to that dollar amount.
Got it. So percentage is still okay.
Yeah. Percentage is still okay. So
got it. Okay.
But again, it does need to be in the contract. Don't do anything outside of escrow ever, right? With anything, but especially this. No. Don't ever tell your veteran clients to pay you outside of contract, please.
What Lauren's saying is, after closing, don't have your buyers slip you a bill or an envelope full of cash.
Oh, please don't do that. Yeah.
And obviously we laugh because things like that have probably happened. So
absolutely. That's why there's a rule about it, right? Because somebody somewhere has done it. It's like, oh no.
Yeah. Everything has to be in writing, and everyone has to agree to it. So
great. Exactly.
For all you rookies out there.
Yeah. So the next bullet point here is it says in the VA circular that veterans are encouraged to negotiate the amount to be paid to their buyer broker, whether the veteran or the seller pays, like whoever pays for it. So I know that realtors might not love to hear that, but I mean, that's what this whole lawsuit was about, is that it's negotiable, right? So try to think of it as like your veteran just wants to make sure they're getting what they pay for, they're getting a good deal, just like how they may be encouraged to shop lenders, right? Welcome to our world now. So don't be afraid to talk about the tremendous value that you guys give. You guys do so much behind the scenes. You bring so much to the transaction. So make sure that you're educating, especially your sellers now on that, right? Because it's like your sellers are the ones that are probably going to be pushing back a lot and saying, hey, why do I have to pay this, 6%? So make sure that you're showing that to them, and don't be afraid to, you don't want to get into the weeds on it, right? Like, oh, well, can I pay you less than 6%? No. And you move right on with the conversation, right? If you ever asked an attorney to give you a break or give on their costs, they'll laugh at you. Ask me how I know, so you want to be that you are the authority.
That's a whole different podcast, Lauren. We're not going to.
Yeah, it's a whole different podcast. But I have one thing on realtors here. You guys pride yourselves on being negotiators, right? You'll have that in your Instagram bio, like best negotiator, So this is your chance to do that part of your job, right? Negotiate, okay? And negotiate with the seller, negotiate with the listing agent, negotiate with your veteran. Like, don't be afraid, like, to do that and to live up to that. Like, that's one of the main parts of your job is to negotiate, right? So don't be afraid to do that, and don't shy away from that and be scared of it, because now people are encouraged to negotiate.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you mentioned this, because 10, 15 years ago, closing costs, that was like kind of normal. Meaning, like, when I'm a listing agent, when I would talk to someone that we're going to sell their house, I would say, now listen, there's some fees that are negotiated that might come up. And, one's home warranty. Oh, okay. What's that? Blah, blah, blah. Right. $600 back years ago. Now it's more, but $500-$600. And then I'd say the next one is closing costs. And so anyone that's got their license in the last 5 years, it's been a seller's market. They have no idea what I'm talking about, but it was kind of standard. I don't know what the stats were, but it was kind of standard that, like, when someone bought your home, they would want $2 or $3 grand to use towards closing costs. And, so us as listing agents, we have to, like, educate our sellers now to say, listen, I don't know what you've heard about the whole whatever, but you're still, when people put in offers, I'm going to get 3% as your listing agent, but then your buyers are going to ask for, probably 3% for their buyer agent. So we got to think about that when we're doing net to seller sheets or talking about your profits. Some will, some won't. We'll find out, and everything's negotiated. So just, be conscientious of that. So, because I can tell you, if I'm a buyer agent, I'm going to be asking the 3% for my buyer. Now we can negotiate it and fist fight it, but I'm going to ask for it. So I think as listing agents, we got to prep our sellers, because you're kind of seeing it already now a little bit, that sellers like, well, I'm never paying anything. Like, it's their God-given right, which it always was. It was always their right not to have to do it, but it was that misconception. So, just educate your sellers that, hey, they're probably going to ask. And if they give you a good price for the house, why not? If they don't, and they try to come in low, then we don't give them, so that's how it was. And that's how it is in commercial. It's always been like that in commercial.
Yeah.
So this isn't really anything new. So, yeah.
I don't
know. Any other pointers?
I think, just that last bullet point is like, why is this important, right? If the VA didn't allow veteran buyers to pay their commissions, our veterans in active duty could be left behind with no options for homeownership, right? Unless the seller pays it. So it would really, really limit that for our veterans and other first-time home buyers as well. I've seen plenty of buyers in conventional, FHA, every loan type, sending us their last bank statement right after they get paid before closing to cover those closing costs and their down payment. Have that going on right now. So it's very common, and we don't want to leave anybody behind, especially our soldiers on home ownership. So
100%. Yeah, because if they didn't make that update, then they would have to pay all the commissions if the sellers didn't want to. That wasn't even an option, right? Like, the sellers would always have to pay it. And if the seller says, I can't, they would have to do it. Or
they would have to do it.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, or the agent would have had to drop their comp.
Yeah. Or just not get paid or whatever. So, yeah. So obviously, and when will, I'm guessing there might be a slight change, but when will how long is this good for?
So it's
good for the
indefinite.
next 12 months?
It's indefinite. So they did say it's temporary, but again, the circulars are good until they're rescinded, even if they expire. And I don't even know if this one has an expiration date on it. It just takes a long time to get anything in a circular, which is like an update to the guidelines or clarification, put into the actual guidelines, because it's the government. So it takes a minute.
Yeah.
So consider yeah, consider this
Oh,
good
change.
for the indefinite future, and I will update you if
Yeah.
anything changes on that.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. And then Lauren has a, and we're going to put it in the comments section. Tell them a little bit about the this long link I'm sharing on the screen here. So
Yep.
you'll
So
never
that
remember
is,
that, guys, but it's in the comments
yeah,
section for everyone to look at.
right.
So
That's the
what is
link to
that,
the
Lauren?
actual, sorry, it's the link to the actual circular, the circular 26/24/14 that the VA put out. It's pretty simple read. It's just if you do want to go through that and read the words straight from the horse's mouth, aka the VA, you're welcome to. I also have a video. It's about 2 minutes long on my TikTok at Lender Girl Lauren about this topic. If you want to share it with anybody, just sometimes your buyers have questions and things like that. It's nice also for a little bit of a refresher. It's a little shorter refresher than rewatching the whole podcast next time you want to have a little update. So happy to help. Again, any general VA questions, if your veterans need help with their benefits or their disability, I have resources for that I can connect you with. So just remember, call me with your VA stuff. I'm here as your resource.
Awesome. And well, thanks, Lauren, for coming on. And then for everyone at home, if you want to get a hold of Lauren, Lender Girl, how do they find you? What's the best way
You can
to
go
get
to my website, yourlendergirl.com, or I'm on social media at lendergirllauren, the Y, Lauryn.
Yeah, don't forget the Y.
yourlendergirl.com. Yeah.
Every time I voice text her, it always screws her name up. So, but thank you, Lauren, for coming on. And if you guys have any questions concerning VA, Lauren's your girl.
Yeah, thank you again for having me on.
You're welcome. So thanks, guys, for coming on today. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section. And if you think you want to be a realtor like me, not Lauren, Lauren's a lender, we got a discount code, 30% off Hondros. So your tuition, 30% off. There's a discount code below. Click it. Then about 3 months. So if you start today, you can have your license by fall, and maybe I'll teach you. I don't know. We'll see. But other than that, guys, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you all very soon.